Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Ravi Panikkar. I lead the team and group coaching community practice for ICF Bangalore Charter Chapter. The duration of today's masterclass is 1.5 hours, with the final 15-20 minutes designated for Q&A. Today's masterclass entails 0.75 CC and 0.75 RD. Participants who attend the full session would be awarded CC certificates by the chapter. Now let me introduce Ebru. Ebru is an empowering, creative, and growth-oriented ICF Master Certified Executive Leadership and Team Coach. She has been coaching individuals, executives, and teams since 2011. During her corporate experience, she held senior roles where she led large businesses and teams. Her experience spans some global, regional, and local brands. Being a leadership skills development, career, and leadership coach, Ebru works with individuals and teams by staying true to her life purpose of unlocking potential. One of her key skills is being able to meet her clients exactly where they are, holding them there just long enough to show how resourceful they are to increase their capacity to grow. She works with her clients on mindset and energy levels by focusing on their being and doing. She truly believes this is the path to transformation and professional empowerment. I am both thankful and grateful to you, Ebru, for taking the time to host the masterclass on unlocking the true potential of the team. A very warm welcome to you, Ebru, on behalf of ICF Bangalore Charter Chapter's team and group coaching community practice. Over to you, Ebru.
Thank you. Oof. I think I got nervous. That's what I'm noticing. It's a long introduction and a deep introduction. Thank you very much. I think I'm getting blushed. So it's a pleasure and honor to be here today, wherever you are in the world, and majority of you seem to be in India. So first, I would like to say good evening. But if you are joining from different parts of the world, good morning and good afternoon to you all. Um, I, Team coaching is something that I'm truly passionate about. In the past, as Ravi said, I had the opportunity to lead large teams, had my own challenges, my own learnings within that experience. And after I started coaching, and really falling in love with the systemic work and systemic change, possibility of creating that systemic change, I started taking some team coaching trainings and become a team coach. And today, what I do is that I also do supervision for team coaches. So I would like to share some also additional information about me, but not from a career perspective, just to introduce myself with my own words. So I'm going to put up the presentation, and then we'll take it from there. There will be times that I will be pausing. First, let me start this. Sorry. There will be times that I will be pausing to create a kind of a two-way conversation. I would like to refrain from having a one-way conversation. I trust that there is so much wisdom already in the room, and I would love to tap into your thoughts, tap into your wisdom, just so we can co-create, if that's okay for you all. So here we go. And yeah. So who am I? I also call myself a dream catcher. And I believe that everyone is a dream catcher. So once we overcome those hurdles in front of our path, there's nothing to hold us back from achieving our dreams. And of course, there's a difference between the dreamer and a dream catcher. So the dream catchers have the courage and the ability to manifest what is important to them, from my perspective. I'm also very much interested in earth teachings. I'm a practitioner of earth teachings, and I find so much similarities between what we do as coaches, supervisors, mentors today, and what our ancestors, in a way, used to practice. They used to have that deep systemic understanding, as I can tell. As Ravi said, I'm a Marcom expert. I spent over 20 years in that field, and I had the opportunity and the privilege to lead large teams and businesses back then. I believe in creating salad bars and not melting pots. I myself have a very diverse family, and I see it as a gift. And it's one of the reasons actually why I choose to live in Dubai, because I get to know so many people over the last 20 years. I get to know so many people from different nationalities, different traditions, different cultures, and I learn from them, and I've grown with them, and I find it so enriching. I'm a crazy dog mom. So me and my husband, we don't have a child together, but we have a dog together. So wherever I go, she goes. So she's someone I think that I will need therapy for very soon. So she's actually sitting just behind me. She may bark anytime, so be prepared, please. As Ravi said, I'm very passionate about unlocking potential, and that led me to actually consider taking coaching trainings and leave the corporate world behind to support those in the corporate world to be able to live up to their utmost potential. I mean, today what we're going to cover is, of course, team coaching and the importance of team coaching. And but before we do that, perhaps we may put some certain things into our design as well. As coaches, we all know the importance of contracting before we start off any engagement, designing a way forward. How are we going to be with each other, and how are we going to hold each other? So again, coming, just bringing that ancient teaching wisdom to our space. I understand that our ancestors at times used to sit in circles. And within those circles, there was that understanding of deep democracy. And each voices of the system, whoever sat in that circle, used to be honored and listened to with no judgment. So my dream for today is, of course, creating the very similar kind of or enabling us to have a very similar approach today, just so we can hear each other out and we can co-create a learning environment for each other. So moving on, why teams matter? I mean, we live in a VUCA world, as you may acknowledge. There is volatility, there is complexity, there is uncertainty and ambiguity in the world that we live, and the only constant is change. And we see organizations making plans, 3 to 5 year plans often, but rarely these plans are followed because of change. Things change, outcome change. So what we also see is that we go through this paradigm shift that lasts in change again, but this time in the workforce and the workplace, actually, the way how people work. And as coaches, there is an opportunity for us to understand, learn, and establish kind of new ways of purpose, new ways of potential, and new ways of power of these teams. Teams are like families, as you may also agree with me. And, by time they grow, and as they grow, the level of belonging and also safety and sense of loyalty also increase within the team. So, and by being humans, human beings, actually, we get so much satisfaction when we are working in groups and when we are achieving things in groups rather than having these silo wins. So there's so much to celebrate there. And that in a way tells us that when we look at the teams, there's an opportunity to balance positivity and productivity. And at times, what we notice is that in some teams, the main focus is on the outcome. These teams are very much task oriented, and relationships are very transactional. And at times of crisis, these teams often collapse. And whereas where there is a strong bond within team members, there is psychological safety and trust within team members. And when the teams are very much relational, it seems like these teams seem to be thriving. So if I am to put it into a better definition of a team, what is it all about? Perhaps it's worth to share the definition, maybe even the ICF definition of teams. So the teams are often defined as a group of people who perform on a common purpose, on a common goal. And that's the main differentiator, I think, between group of, working groups and teams. So in a way, there is interconnectedness and interdependency amongst these team members. And the glue is the purpose that keeps them together, or the common goal that keeps them together. So perhaps if I am to put it into a metaphor, if you are to imagine a spider web, it's one of the best descriptions of teams. When you look at a spider web, what sits at the center of the spider web is the purpose, the common goal. And all those strings define the roles and responsibilities are taken by team members. And as you notice, they're interconnected, so and interrelated as well. So any action that I will take will create an impact on my team members, and there, being purposeful, of course, is quite important. Being intentional is quite important. And this is something that we also need to keep in mind as team coaches. So how do we work? What is the purpose of having a team coach? We do partner up with teams, this web in a way, to unleash their kind of collective power, their purpose, and their potential. So in a way, we collaborate with them and connect with them. By doing so, we also focus on the process. It's very critical. Sometimes when I work with team coaches, as shared, I do team coaching supervision for team coaches, but also on training. I see that at times there's confusion around accountability. So as team coaches, we are accountable for the process for sure, and we work with our teams to improve their performance for sure, but we are not responsible for the outcome. So the teams are the ones actually responsible for the outcome as it happens in individual coaching, one-on-one coaching. So I would like to share with you a beautiful, actually, formula from my perspective that taken from Tim Galway. And Tim Galway is the author of the Inner Game, or the founder of the Inner Game. And he used to be, for those who are not familiar with him, he used to be a tennis coach at Harvard in the 70s. And his main focus, so he used to work with the tennis team there. And the essence of the summer story is that he was focusing on the development of one of the players, and that player was not being able to cross the edge to perform in a way that he would actually unlock his own potential. And after a summer break or so, Team Galway again, gathered with the team and got the chance to observe this player. And he was surprised because he noticed a massive change in the skill set of the player. And he wondered what changed. What he found out was, instead of focusing on instead of focusing on the what, actually the player was focusing on the process and envisioning the ball, crossing the net and getting to the other side of the court. So, and then he came up with a formula. And this says that kind of performance is equal to potential minus interference. We all have this inherent potential within ourselves, which applies the same for the teams, but at times there is interference. And interference might be it might happen internally or externally. So often external interferences related to the environment, but what usually gets in the way is the internal interference, the voice or the internal dialogue that is in our head. And this may very much apply the same for the teams. So when we are working with teams, what we also need to focus on, what is it getting in their way? That is not allowing them to perform at their best. And there, what we focus on is the process and the content rather than the what itself. And often the trap that we may fall into, or the teams may fall into, is only to focus on the what. And what itself is not enough. Change happens when we widen our lenses and look at the possibilities there to emerge the full potential of the team from a perspective of the process, understand the process, what needs to change in the process, and what needs to change in their content, or what needs to address in their content. So, and as team coaches, this is exactly what we focus on. So I've been talking about change, and what I would love to offer you more about the change and change theory as well. So because it's inevitable, and this is every day what we deal with in our personal lives and in business and as coaches as well. So as you may also agree, there are some driving forces behind the change, and there are some restricting forces behind the change. So kind of enablers and trailers. When we're exploring the content and when we're exploring the process of change, these are actually the things that we may like to look into. From mindset to behavior to culture, and what is known and what is unknown to the team, what is being said, what's not being said to the team. So when we let what is bubbling under the surface to come to the surface, then these all become evident to the team for them to address. In the change theory, there are kind of there are two kind of realities. One reality is about the primary reality. The other one is the secondary reality. Let us imagine that there's a team or there's an organization, and this organization has some successful product lines, and these products are performing very well in the market. However, they may make a decision to launch or develop and launch a new product. When it happens, it may put pressure, let's say, on the product development team in order to develop that prototype within a certain time frame. And then we see some edge behaviors there, because in the primary reality, actually, they are doing very well. The business is flourishing, still flourishing, and the products are well received, by the audience, by their customers. So sales are going well. So they may question why we need to change, why need to put ourselves under this pressure. So then the secondary reality is when the change happens, when the product is launched. So they need to move from the primarily reality to secondary reality. So that internal dialogue that might be happening in their minds may lead to some edge behaviors, where we can see and within that, what we can see is, challenging the status quo, resistance, and lack of acceptance, not being on board, and so on and so forth. And studies also show that with regards to change, people may show different behaviors. So some of us are kind of leapers, and perhaps, according to studies, again, 5% of the population may count as leapers. So they lead the change, they come up with ideas, they are more innovative, and they're more courageous. Whereas maybe 60% of the population is kind of traditionalists. So we're more conservative in our thinking. We like to maintain the status quo. If something is working, why to change that? And there are bridge makers. So they are the ones who close the gap in a way, bridge the gap. And they are the first adapters to change. So when we observe these behaviors as team coaches, then we can identify the roles that the team members are taking in the process of change as well. And and there are change agents, as you notice. So as you may agree with me, so these leapers and as well the bridge makers become change agents. So in the process of team coaching, when we identify them and when we give voice to all these three parties, then the truth will surface, and they will get to understand each other's point of view as well. And there are times that the teams are not ready to move to the secondary reality, and it's okay. But what happens is that they fall into realm and they kind of close down. And there is patience needed because they're not ready to cross the edge. And they kept kind of being edged out and edged out and edged out. Why? Because all these little, edges that they need to cross from a point of view, even from a culture point of view, they haven't crossed them yet. Once they cross, they will be ready to get to the new reality and be aligned there together. So let me pause here for now and come back to you to see whether or not you have any thoughts, whether or not you may like to contribute into the discussion in a way. So what is in the space? Silence, that's in the space for sure. So besides that, reflections maybe. Sure, I can, of course. Last slide, the change theory one, right? Okay. Just a second, please. So I'm not good at two things. One of them is time management. The second one is technology. So let me see how I can make it. Let me go back to that. That's why I don't like. Yes, here we go. Can you see the slide? I can't see messages. So okay. If you need to take a screenshot of it, feel free to do that. Satyajit, you have a question, I think, or you would like to
No,
offer
no,
something.
I just wanted to say, as you rightly said, that inner game, the book. We had just a review of inner game book, and it really talks the potential is only after removing all the distractions, and that is the interference.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the reflection is that we have in this world where the knowledge is available, there are a lot of distractions, and the team is exposed to so many distractions within and outside also. So
yeah,
the listing down the distraction can be one thought which I have in my mind. And the second point which you said, very important, the identifying who are the people who are against the change, who are the people wants to have a status quo, and who are the people who wants to breach, and how do you capture them? So maybe I think you can throw some light later on that. How do we identify those 20% of people who can drive the balance 80% of the people within the team? That eighty
sure,
twenty rule. So
sure.
something like that which just came in my mind. I just thought to share this.
Thank you. So I think as coaches, we are great observers and we have the ability to read the field. And when we are really connected to the to our teams on an individual level and then on a collective level, we can easily tell what the distractions are. And there's one tool that I will be sharing with you today, the Deep Democracy tool, that will also help us identify these voices, their roles, their concerns, and their positions towards change as well. And coming back to your second question, I think the answer that I gave might also address that. Again, reading the field, understanding, staying curious, trusting our intuition, naming what we see, and then checking it with our clients will help us to also again see who are the leapers, who are the traditionalists, and who are the bridge makers within the system. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I got
Happy to hear that. Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions that you may have?
Two things, in fact, stood out as you were sharing this, Ebru. One is, in fact, the key word when it comes to teams is interdependent. And secondly, as Amy Edmondson rightly says, it is not about who's on the team, but how the team functions is more important.
Indeed, indeed. And maybe there are some core principles around that as well, Ravi, when we think of team coaching. I mean, holding people naturally creative, resourceful, and whole is kind of a principle perhaps that we can come from, and which we also come, honor when we are doing one-on-one coaching, right? Individual coaching, and also a kind of in a way accepting the fact that teams are more the sum of their parts.
True.
And they are living entities, so they may change different take different forms, and depending on where they are in the process, and when they are in the process of change, again the form of the team may change from norming to storming to forming to storming to norming as well. And again, the effectiveness of teams lies in those perhaps connection points in between team members, which come back to I think what you mentioned, Ravi, that interconnectedness and interrelatedness and perhaps interdependency. And as team coaches, when we are to stay in the here and now with our team members, with our teams, that will lead to creating awareness. And that's our main job, actually, creating awareness, that deep level of awareness, which will lead to, in a way, change and performance and behavioral change. So the only difference is that it's a more collective approach than individual approach. And all the voices within the team actually becomes the voice of the team. So they create, when team members come together and kind of align on a common goal, they create a third entity. And that third entity has its own intelligence. And what we are coaching is actually that third entity rather than the individual voices. Sorry, there is a message. Is this something? Let me check on another call. Okay, no problem at all. Thanks for letting us know. Satyajit, for deep awareness, any tools can help. Sure, we can talk about that. There's one tool that I will be sharing with you already towards the end. So we can have a deeper conversation around that. So I'm moving on. Okay. This time it worked. So what I would like to share with you is also a kind of a framework or a model from Peter Hawkins, who is one of the gurus of team coaching. And here, in the model, when we look at the model, it's actually not a linear model. It's a very active model. So it's always in motion, in other words. So as you see on the north, there's task, and at the south there's process, and so also we look through from inside to outside approach. And when we are working with teams, often the challenges that they may face or the growth opportunities that they may have may fall into one of these quadrants. Sometimes it might be related to commissioning. They may not have a clear purpose or understanding about their common goal. Uh, Often it's written, but it's not fully embraced. And so when we are looking again the outside from a process point of view, connectedness is very important. Are the team members or the team itself is really engaged with their internal and external stakeholders, and whether or not an ongoing communication. And when we look at the North, of course, it's about clarifying, the roles and responsibilities, their KPIs, goals, objectives, and as well, and etc. So it's more about putting together kind of a clear understanding of why they do what they do and who they need to be able to achieve their common goals. And then the co-creation. So the web, actually, the spider web kind of falls under this part because it's all about their interpersonal skills, how relational they are, the team dynamics, and the team culture that they create. Patrick Lencioni, in his book of Five Dysfunctions of a Team, he talks about an amazing model you might be already familiar with. And what he, after 20 years of research and studies as being an organizational psychologist, he came up with this model. And at the bottom, what sits is trust. And in absence of trust, we may struggle to have or manage conflict. So, and we may see ourselves as team coaches often focusing on that trust building part of the team dynamics. And it's again related to co-creation part of this model. And when there is trust, when there is safety, sense of safety within a team, so what happens is that team members don't feel like they have the need to filter their thoughts. They can speak up openly. And when it happens, there is more commitment towards each other and what they need to deliver, which comes back to the KPIs. And then there's accountability towards that, and it drives results. I mean, I'm 52 years old and I've been working almost more than 30 years. I started working when I was in uni, and back in those days, we rarely see leaders when I joined the workforce who came from this level of intelligence and awareness. The main drive back then was about all driving results and making sure that we achieve our goals. However, people used to work in silos, or there was kind of a sense of fear to speak up. And of course, when crisis happens, these teams collapse, or we observe a high level of turnover within those teams. So, and thankfully now there's more emotional intelligence and relationship intelligence that we see in teams and in team leaders that lead us to, really first address what really matters in building those high performance teams, which is all about trust actually. And when it's there, the internal chatter also volumes down because there is less interference getting in the way of performance. Shall we pause? Would you like to add anything before we head to deep democracy and explore the tool? And if so, please just raise your hand so that we will know. Or yes, please. Satyajit, over to you.
Yeah, I had a little bad experience in terms of one client where the team had a very good connecting.
For some reason,
Hello.
I can't hear you well. Can you come closer to your, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
screen?
Am I audible?
It's better, yes.
Yeah.
There's
So
in the background, that's why.
yeah. So I had a bad experience in terms of a team where there's a lot of connecting factor, and then the team taking advantage of the director, and there has to be some discipline. So is there any particular balance, uh, you know, which you propose in terms of not to have more connecting, more connecting where the people are find it more free, to talk, but the task is not focused. The balance is lost. So how do we balance it out if the connecting is more and if the relationship is more, the task is compromised?
So can you share more context because of your audio, I'm not being able to pick up on what you shared.
So I was managing one client where there's a team, and the
Yes.
team is yeah. So the team is been given very much free hand by the director,
Okay.
and they were like free to do whatever they want to. The whole expenses has been approved. So there was a lot of personal relationship was very good, but the task was compromised. Whenever the task, there are excuses which are coming up, and all those false excuses, "Okay, this did not happen, that did not happen, the customer was not good," and the result was going down. So
Mm-hmm.
I had a different experience than what you said. Mostly, in India we have a autocratic system where the task is given importance, but I had a client where the relationship was more important, and then task was compromised. So when the connecting thing, and the director was very good. I mean, he is very good. He's very cooperative. He's very supportive to the team. But the team is not focused on the task because relationship is more important. So how do we balance it out? So the connecting factor should have some percentage, or is there any pro rata percentage of all those four factors? To have a balance, or is it situational based or task based? We need to balance all the four.
Sure, thanks for sharing. So I'm picking up on two things, and let me know what you feel about them. The first one is, so I want to appreciate for your care for the team, and I have an assumption between me and myself that you may have the need to fix it. You're trying to find ways to fix it, which may not fall under your responsibility as a team coach. So if you're coming from a place of being a savior, so just check in between you and yourself. And the second one is that perhaps the intercultural intelligence piece of it. So so what are the cultural drivers or motivators for a team to perform? Perhaps this is something else that need to be kept in mind. So there are primarily secondarily drivers in each person and in each culture. Let's say in Western cultures, these cultures, like, I don't want to generalize, but when we look at North America, Scandinavian countries, and so what we see is kind of more of guilt and innocence culture. So in guilt and innocence cultures, what happens is that they are more of like, what is right, what is wrong. And these cultures are very much kind of, ethical codes are highly honored, but there might be lack of empathy. That each culture has their pros and cons. So in some of the African and South American countries and in the Middle East, what we see as a primary culture is pride and shame culture. So the family names are very important, and verbal agreements, contracts are very important. People are very relational, yet people may cover things up, not to feel ashamed. And when we look at some of the Asian countries, what we see is power and fear culture. So the power and fear culture, of course, like any other cultures, has its own pros and cons. So in power and fear culture, in an organization, people look up to the authority and the direction comes from the authority. And they like to unite around that. And they may easily climb up the ladders by following the footsteps of the leaders of the organization. Yet they may not feel empowered enough, or empowerment may not come to them naturally. Sense of self-empowerment. So perhaps just an assumption that this might be a challenge also you might be facing with. And if so, there might be an opportunity to create awareness around that within the team. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. I think that's the realization what you're saying. Now, however, I had to dismantle the team and then frame a new team. In that case, actually, I had to use fear and then did it. What you said is right. But I could have now I can try this method which you have suggested. More awareness and then work on it. So I think that could be a new way. Yeah.
Sure. And having open conversations and courageous conversations around that can help. And they might be, maybe they are struggling to cross an edge, Sajid. So we talk about the change theory, right? It's a tool that you can also use with them. So their primary reality was totally different than where they landed now. They become the decision makers. There is so much autonomy given to them. And perhaps they haven't crossed some certain edges yet to get there. So when you're working with your team, with this team, if you are to identify these edges that they need to cross, then you may support them to get there as well. Does that help?
Thanks. I'll work on that. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. So the change theory is another tool that you can use actually. Any other thoughts that you may have? Okay, moving on. Sorry, let me check the chat. Okay, the leadership group model. Yes.
Sorry, if I can just pitch in here. I'm sorry, I'm not able to turn my video on, Ebru. Something that I've been thinking about the last couple of days pops up over here as a tool, or yeah, I guess it could be used as a tool, and that is shadow work. So, shadow work is often used in the individual context, but I believe teams also have shadows. And while the problem here is the shadow looks very positive, we're all, the relationship is very positive, everybody's relationship focused. But in this case, the shadow over there is, being afraid to step on someone else's toes, not being able to say something direct, not being able to switch gears, and have a deeper level of trust where even when I hold you accountable, there is still trust there. So all of those are shadow elements of a team that is very relationship oriented, and I believe that could work over here. Just offering that as a, since Satyajit asked for a tool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And sometimes the shadows are the ghosts also in the system. So the way how they used to work together and the roles and responsibilities kind of they used to have within that environment in the old reality can create shadows because they may appear as ghosts within the system. So they may need to be addressed as well. Thank you, Sidi. I really appreciate that. So Sudarshan says that the leadership group model by Robert Blake and Jane Mouton talks about concern for tasks and concern for people. Thanks for offering that. These are offers gifts to you, Sajjad. You're being cared for, by your peers here. The culture map by Aaron Mayer is also an insightful resource for cultural difference across geos. Thank you. So I'm moving on. And what I'm heading into is the deep democracy. So I tried to, when I was welcoming you and when I shared that circle with you, this is what I wanted to set a context for as well. Because to me, the theory or the concept of deep democracy really goes back to centuries, where our ancestors actually used to honor and live by. So, however, the concept was first, the way how we know it today, the concept was first coined by Arnold Mindell, and who is a physicist and at the same time Jungian analyst. And it's based on his work of process of orientated psychology, and which actually shifted the psychology to become in kind of alignment with the new physics based on the quantum kind of wisdom. So in other words, it's more about the energetic field, the collective intelligence, and at the same time, the energy field. And what is it that we are receiving from that, how much we are aligned with that, and how much we are creating from that space. So there is energy and flow within this theory. And of course, it kind of had a tremendous effect on how we understand the group behaviors and group dynamics today as well. So when we look at also deep democracy, in a way, it's a vision, it's a method, and it's a theory in one. So it's all combined together. This tool or this concept enables, when it's used as a tool, enables teams to make decisions about their way forward, because it enables team members to speak up. As you may acknowledge, at times there are more dominant voices within the system, and some of the voices are marginalized. And not necessarily these voices get the chance to speak up, especially if there's fear in the system. And once we hear all the voices, once we recognize all the voices and acknowledge all the voices within the system, then it's an opportunity to listen to each other, hear each other, and find an alignment on what they need to address within themselves. So just going deeper in that, then what is the purpose of deep democracy? Of course, what we do is that it enables us to discover more information about the system. And then with that information, with that awareness, with that clarity, teams can make some decisions and take some actions. And there are so many things may feel like taboo within the system to name. With this process, they will get to be kind of called out or named. And when there's this level of deep openness and transparency within a system, it may create a sustainable culture within itself. And also roles, in other words, positions that each team member might be taking within that system will become very clear as well. We talk about the leapers and the breach makers and the traditionalists. These are also kind of stances that we take towards towards what needs to happen, what needs to change, or what's happening here and now. And when we use the principle, this theory as a tool, then we get some raw data from this conversation, this courageous conversation can be used in service of the team moving forward. And what do we expect then? What do we expect to happen? Chaos, for sure. So if the voices are so marginalized for so long, and then when they're out there, it may create a chaos. And because what's being revealed to the system may create surprise, and people may get confused as well. We may see when we use the tool as a team coach, we may see some strong reactions. So we need to have the ability to kind of create that container for them, safe container for them, and then hold the space for them as well. We talk about kind of shadows and some of the shadows are those ghosts roles who used to be part of the system and they're no longer there, or some of the roles who are part of the system, but in that moment during the team coaching session, not present. Let's say you may coach a team and you want to give a voice to the CEO. The CEO is an external stakeholder related to the matter, most likely with their role, but in that team coaching session, maybe they're not in the room. Then what we do is in the activity, in the intervention, actually, we also give a voice to the CEO. And also, we give voices to people who are no longer part of the team, but still have an impact. We should be prepared for dissatisfaction. We cannot keep everyone happy. Such as you mentioned, 80-20 rule, I think this is exactly what it's all about. Minimum 20% of the participants or around that may feel dissatisfied by that. But it creates a opportunity to speak up freely, to hear each other out, and show up courageously for each other, and also for the interest of the team as well. And as we are doing the application of this tool, we may notice that topics may shift, and it's perfectly fine. So we need to be ready for that, and we need to hold space for that flow and change and shift as well. And as we are designing the rules, as we are contracting prior to the application of the tool, we need to also make it clear to the team members that whatever is going to show up here is not personal. It's just what is present in the moment, here and now, within this team. We already started talking about some ground conditions for deep democracy. So safety is very important, especially for those who feel marginalized. And there might be some unpopular voices due to some unpopular, thoughts that they may have. So they need to feel safe first. They need to understand and make sure that they will not be judged for what they share. And there will be some, paradox in that conversation. So as a team coach, we should have the ability to hold those number of paradoxes. People may polarize, and that's perfectly fine due to the opposite thoughts that they may voice out. And what we do is kind of listening to the voice of the system actually there. And we talk about the third entity. This is exactly what we are working with in that moment, because all these voices are part of the third entity of the team that they co-create or co-created. And I already talk about the positions that the team members may take. to kind of express their thoughts and needs and wants as well. So how do we use this tool? So first of all, we agree on a topic, right? Whatever they need to address, it might be about, let's say, some performance challenges. It might be about how they can adapt to some cultural change. As we know, workplace well-being is a big topic these days. I'm glad that it's been addressed finally, and this might be a topic as well, or some team toxicities or communication toxicities might be present within the team. Or how do they need to move from forming to performing in a way? So within that, we identify the topic and then kind of put things into a context. In other words, as team coaches, we always do in the beginning, we educate our team, our clients. So we tell them the purpose of this intervention and how it's going to support that, what they may expect to happen within that. Again, we talk about the roles that they may take, and some of them may take also eldership roles and bring some wisdom. If they are being within the organization for a long time, they can bring that wisdom as well. We also design with that at times, people leave, but their presence, their absence has also an impact, or how they used to be with the team members, especially if the leaders are changing. If the team is going through restructuring, we see lots of ghosts within the team. So we address them and we say that these voices may show up, although they are no longer part of the team. And then we invite them to be open to influence. And then we start having this courageous conversation. So each voice takes a role, either their own role or a role that is not present in the room, being a finance director to a CEO to old, let's say, team leader, ex-team leader. So they each take different roles. So I voice out a concern or a belief, let's say from a marketing manager's point of view, and then some others may join in me, and then they share similar concerns or thoughts or dreams, vision around that. And then another person may share another point of view. So kind of voices will start grouping within the room. So and then this will give us an opportunity to hear everyone out. And as a team coach, we also capture the raw data, what's happening there. And that will lead to awareness and learning. And then based on that, team can take actions towards what needs to happen. And then we bring of course, the process to close. Once when I was, so I work in the Middle East mainly, and mainly in GCC countries. And when it comes to team coaching, and once I was in a team coaching engagement, and I invited the client to go through this deep democracy tool. And knowing, I don't want to again story type anything, but at times we may find some conservative people in the room, and who have strong religious beliefs as well. And so one of the team members was a very conservative gentleman, and he sat on his chair. He didn't stand up. He was just sitting there and not getting involved into the conversation. And people were stepping in and out. As a coach, also, I was stepping in, sharing that I'm removing my coach hat. Now I'm putting the hat of this voice, creating an impact, and then stepping out. And then all of a sudden, he stood up on a chair. He got on a chair. I remember he was so, and anyway, he's a tall gentleman, and he was just standing up, and he was like, I take the words of God. And that silence in the room. And he said that as the voice of God, I'm surprised to see your level of ego in this room, and how your egos are getting in the way of us working cohesively together. And he named actually the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room was their internal, interests, egos, needs were getting in the way, and they were kind of rejecting to work cohesively. And then everyone sat, and I invited them to reflect on what showed up in the activity, and they took notes. After reflections, of course, we do debriefing, and then that was the game changer for them. They crossed the edge, and then they decided to take some actions towards how they could create a cohesive and high-performing a team. So, in summary, if I am to refer to Peter Drucker, the most important thing in communication is to hear what is being said. And the deep democracy tool enables the team members to voice out what's being said and unsaid in a courageous and conversation. So this brings us to the end of, oh my goodness, it's already 5:34, end of my presentation, and I'm wondering whether or not you may have some questions or offerings to the space.
Thanks for sharing that story, Ebru. Quite interesting how this gentleman showed up. But I think the very act of him standing on the chair itself could symbolize ego, right? I mean, he may be, he may be projecting that onto the team as well, or vice versa.
Might be. I think he thought that perhaps not to defend him, but perhaps he thought that, when there is God in that belief system, when there is God and it's so big and so, how could you dare to come from this egoistic place? So I think he wanted to really embody and embrace the bigness of God from his perspective, and show them actually maybe humility and humbleness in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Jyoti.
Hi, I had a question. Actually, I had two questions. One was just in that context, I was just curious to understand if, in case this person had not stood up and really changed the dynamics of the conversation, would it be your role then to step in and call that elephant in the room, or would you just allow that conversation to proceed the way it was? So, just curious to understand that first one. And the second, I just wanted some clarity about the roles. So, is it that people are open to have the roles that they would want to play? You assign the roles, people pick up. How does this roles aspect come into play in the real work? So, these two questions. Thanks.
Sure, thank you. So to answer your first question, most likely I would have continued trusting the process and trusting the wisdom of the team, and coming from that belief that things will surface. So I will continue trusting their resourcefulness. However, I would have also used myself as a barometer. So if I'm strongly feeling something or sensing and noticing something, most likely I would have taken a voice of ego, I don't know, or any interference that I might be picking up on, and then name it out and then see how it lands. If more people are gathering around that thought, then step out and leave the space to them. The second question, those roles, I mean, there are internal and external roles. Internal roles are, let's say, or let me start off with an external role. Let's say I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a coach, I'm a supervisor, and so on and so forth. My job description as well. These are my external roles. But I also take some internal roles in relationships. Sometimes challenging, sometimes being creative, sometimes being intuitive, sometimes being nurturing, sometimes being assertive. These are the internal roles that I take in relationships based on who I am, because who I am is how I lead life, right? So, and as well from my values and most likely belief systems. So these roles become so apparent as internal and external in those interventions. And some of the external roles may no longer be there, and then they show up as ghosts, or the internal roles of these ghosts might be showing up there. And that may give us an indication on two things, perhaps. First, what does this team need? Or what is it that they are not being able to let go of or make peace with? Does it answer your question?
Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you.
My pleasure, of course.
With your permission, Ebru, if all of us can come on video and we can take a quick photograph.
Of course, I would love that.
Ajit, you will help us with the photograph? Thank you.
Thanks for your turning your cameras on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll just wait for a few more seconds, few more people to turn on their cameras.
Sure. Ajit, it seems like you're an expert in this.
Not really.
It seems to be a role that you're taking.
And Ravi's just given me this responsibility, so I'm trying to do my best.
Appreciate it.
I guess few can't, so I've taken the picture anyway.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ajit.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Actually, maybe I should have asked you to keep your cameras on from the very beginning. You're very comfortable. I didn't want to put any pressure on you. I wish I did it. Hemani.
Yeah, hi. And thank you for such an insightful webinar so far. I was just wanting to pursue the story which you just shared has been on my mind, and some of the questions have already been answered about, the person's role also getting up and, speaking, and I could almost visually imagine it. I just wanted to know the coach's stance after such an event, such a thing has happened. Like, what would you immediately kind of do and orient yourself to kind of be uh, after such a thing has been called, like an elephant in the room has been called, and in a pretty dramatic way, if I may say, in this case. And thereby maybe others where it has come out of other tools or other discussions and something. So as a team coach, in my own experience, we've done it in different ways, and it usually just evolves and organically just kind of comes out. And we just kind of wear an hat by asking, so what is really coming out and what do you see? And somebody just sums it up. So do you feel that sometimes, and you did share that sometimes it's worth calling out for by what you're feeling inside one of the roles that you're also playing. So, but I'm still a little confused about it, that do we call out or do we just stay there waiting for it to be called out?
So as you always do in team coaching, you facilitate the conversation, right? So there's a role that we take, and we are helping them to create that awareness by voicing out their thoughts. and we facilitate that conversation. Of course, we use core coaching skills by doing so. We
Sure.
summarize what we hear, we paraphrase what we hear. Sometimes we offer metaphors about what we hear, and so on and so forth. So, but the difference is that, there is an opportunity in this activity, there is an opportunity for the team coach to step into a role,
Oh,
but
okay.
then they need to recontract.
Ah,
Yeah. So what we do, I'm now I'm removing the head of a coach, and I'm putting the head of this voice, and I named out, I called it out, and then see the impact of it,
right.
and then I go back to my coach role again. Yes.
Okay.
And usually what I do in these activities, interventions is, so when I count on my intuition and my senses, what I'm noticing, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing, right? Like 4 coaching considerations. I may work creatively. That's my style. So often I do weather forecast. I pause and say that, oh, it feels like it started hailing here.
Okay.
It feels like there's thunderstorm. Or I may use some metaphors. I'm seeing fireworks, or there's a rainbow.
Yeah, I get
So
it.
it's a different level of awareness within the client.
Yeah,
Clients.
yeah, I hear
Of
you.
what I'm noticing, kind of holding a mirror up to the system
Yeah,
and how it's landing.
right,
Does
right.
it answer?
Oh,
Do you
yes, it
mind?
does. Thanks so much. Thank you.
My pleasure. Mita.
Hi. So I may have a question that may seem a little banal, for this forum, but curious to know how, if the roles are not emerging, the internal roles are not emerging in a process. Curious to know how you would sort of facilitate that, if you do facilitate that. That's my
Sure.
question.
Thank you. So if if at the essence, so not the essence, but sometimes what we see in the essence of some of the teams is a strong fear culture, and that might be holding themselves back, the team members, to voice out what they are feeling. If there's lack of trust, there's lack of rapport or psychological safety, they may not speak up. And then as a team coach, and I'm a challenging team coach, it's even written in my bio when I send it to my clients, then I challenge the system by holding a mirror up and sharing that I feel like we're kind of swimming in by the shore and not going deep enough, not diving deep enough. Or I may say that I'm noticing that some of the voices of the system is not spoken, or they are not speaking enough. These voices are not clearly heard enough. And I'm wondering what lies behind that. So I start challenging the system by revealing what I'm noticing about the system. And then maybe an interference might be named this way. Maybe that's the very first thing that they need to address before they need to address before addressing what I'm contracted for, right? So naming the elephant in the room again. Does it answer your question, Mita?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Timothy.
Yes, could you just refresh my memory about the reference to ghosts in this context?
So, sure. Ghosts used to be part of people who used to be part of the system, or culture used to be so present in the system, but it's no longer there. So it could be about culture, it could be about their values, it could be about their vision, it could be about people who are no longer there, but they are still present in their absence. So because in people's memories, they're remembered, it's literally anchored. And there might be a longing towards still having either these people or having that culture. And that might be an interference.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question.
I have just one more question with respect to the ghosts. When we start a coaching assignment, a team coaching assignment, we are to start on a clean slate, right? So, my question is, how do we know that the voices of the ghosts need to be brought in? Is that during a diagnosis you've done prior to your team coaching actual process?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so when you do the team diagnosis, and when you have also kind of interviews with team members, with team leader, I do it often separately with team members and the team leader and some other key stakeholder. And there are some team diagnostics tools as well. These you may already start picking up on the change that they went through and wonder whether or not this change had an impact. Let's say 6 months ago, the team leader might have changed and there might be a new team leader, or the team might be going, or the organization might be going through restructuring. So we may think that perhaps the team has not got to the secondary reality yet, then the primary, what they used to have in the primary reality may show up or have a possibility show up as a possibility show up as a ghost. I couldn't make the sentence, I noticed. So may show up as a ghost in summary. And you can also be, as team coaches, we read in between the lines, right? What is in between the lines? What is said? What is not said? And staying curious with that. It's just like on a whiteboard, I'm putting a post-it there. I'm curious with this. I'm not making any judgment or assumption about it. But if it shows up, I'm ready for that in a way, to hold the space for the team. Okay, it does answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have 9 more minutes. We can take a couple of more questions if there are.
So, Ebru, if you could also help, you talked about this 5 aspects before we just moved into the deep democracy. If you can just help a refresh, and what, in your experience, have been one of those key aspects where there is a massive pull or people just get stuck sometimes as a team in any of these dimensions or lack of it?
Sure, and I may have a bias around that. I just need to clarify this. Maybe most of my work is in that, quadrant. It might be a reason why I have a bias. but often I'm noticing that it's about co-creation and connection. Again, that reminds me Patrick Lencioni's model of trust, what makes a team functional and dysfunctional, and at the same time, toxic behaviors, effective versus toxic communication styles, whether or not people are working in silos or really collaborating together, whether or not there's, transparency amongst different counterparts. And sometimes there's resistance to change that I'm noticing as well. And it's been 2 years or so, I'm noticing that I do team coaching for workplace well-being. Then it goes back to me, all quadrants, because there is learning there as well. From each quadrant, there is learning that comes out that we apply. But from a commissioning perspective, so what is the purpose of this organization with regards to creating workplace well-being from a clarifying point of view? Then how are also the organizational KPIs or the team KPIs are defined to create that workplace well-being, and then what needs to change in their communication style and their way of working. In that context, it's a broader approach in a way. Does it answer your question, Jyoti?
Yeah.
Great.
So can I answer that? Can I add my 2 cents to it? In fact, if you look at Peter Hawkins' 5 disciplines of a high-performing team, what is at the core? The learning, right? He starts with commissioning, in fact, clarifying, connecting. That is one aspect. And in fact, you referred to Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team, right? On one hand, if you look at the dysfunctions, and on the other hand, if you look at Project Aristotle, right, where the first factor being psychological safety, whereas Lencioni says absence of trust, right? Fear of conflict being the second dysfunction. Here it talks about dependability, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it all depends on how we use it or apply it. In fact, according to me, they're all interconnected, all 3.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Thanks for sharing. And it's not linear either. It's very fluid. So it's always in motion. Yes, we need to have a strong foundation, but we may fall back to the foundation again when we are a high-performing team, and some certain variables of our reality, let's say, or parts of our reality changes. We may need to go back to the foundational level again and readdress that. So we are always in motion in a way. Thank you. Satyajit.
Yeah, I think the tool which you have been saying at the end, that you are going to tell, the deep awareness tool. Deep awareness, the tool which you are going to use for deep awareness, is it deep democracy which you are saying as the tool to be used for a deep awareness? Or is there
It's
any
one
other
of
tool?
the tools. It's one of the tools. It's not the only tool. So and there are so many tools out there, as you also know. This application of this tool also requires the coach to be very anchored and trust themselves as well, because for sure chaos will happen. For sure people will surprise and react. So the coach himself or herself should stand tall to be able to hold that container. To me, it's a very bold tool.
Yeah, so as you rightly said, only my worry is like maybe I'll try to apply, but as you said, Indian culture has a power and fear. So probably it will take a bit time to apply deep democracy tool in Indian context. That's my judgment probably.
Yes,
But
yes, and application of the tool may look different from one culture to another. And I think it's okay.
yeah,
And also, please remember, if I may invite you to, we meet our teams as we meet our clients where they are. So what matters is really engaging with them at where they are, being here and now, and then connecting with them there to enable them to kind of unlock their potential for change. And some teams might be so curious and courageous. They may have an open culture and they may be ahead of the curve, and that's fine. And some might be more kind of conservative in their approach due to the cultural reasons or the organization culture reasons. And then we just meet them where they are and hold them at their best and still apply this tool. So if we are in other words, as coaches, as we always do, we shouldn't hold an agenda for the client, because if we are to start dreaming about them, how they need to be when this tool is applied, then we might be ahead of them and unintentionally we might be dragging them to a certain place. And that's kind of a red flag for us, right? Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
And I also find Johari window as a very simple and effective tool when it comes to developing or building self-awareness.
Yeah, big time. I mean, you don't even need to invite them to speak up. Sometimes they can jot things down on a post-it. And anonymously, you can collect them. You're still giving voice to the system.
So one last question, we've come to the end of the hour.
Oh, there are 11 posts. Sorry, I didn't notice. Okay, thank you. Thanks so much for your kind words. So patience and trusting the process. I totally agree. So over to you, Ravi.
So thank you, Ebru, for taking the time to host the masterclass for the team and group coaching COP. I personally have many takeaways from today's session. Thank you, coaches, for joining us this evening. Wishing you all a fantastic year ahead.
Thank you so much. And same wishes from my end as well. It was a pleasure to, in this 1.5 hours, to get to know you and connect with you. Thanks for your contribution. Thanks for your participation. And thank you so much for your level of curiosity. It means a lot to me. And I wonder when we will meet again. All the best. Take care.
Thanks
Thank you
once
so much,
again.
Ebru.
Thanks.